After the first Ghost Rider opened and it was successful, the studio wanted to do a second one, and they started working on the script for almost 2 years.
Some time had passed, and we were thinking that there was another story to tell. Nick had reached out to the studio and to us saying that he was eager to do it.
The beginning really happened when I was in England doing promotion on Ghost Rider, Mark Steven Johnson's movie, and I was dressed in black leather from head to toe, and it was during the junket, and I just decided I wanted to go into Westminster Abbey on my lunch break.
There was a couple sort of clergy from different schools of Christian faith, and they were all there discussing sort of faith and, you know, in Europe and the world and sort of the church.
And then a bishop from Colorado kind of looked back at me, and he saw me in like one of the pews far off in the distance.
Send someone, is it Mr. Cage? Yeah.
So he invited me to sit down and watch the summit up close.
And they started to talk, and they said, you know, the church can use someone like you. They're fighting the devil. And it started almost like a friendly banter.
You must confess the one thing that is most difficult for you to talk about.
That put the seed in my head of what you could do with another Ghost Rider, that he was somehow working with the church, that the church needed him in some way.
The idea of, you know, the church reaching out to a demon or to a guy who had made a deal with the devil, possessed by a demon, was obviously kind of a wild idea.
So.
And it wasn't until Mike DeLuca got a script that the studio got behind, they felt they could go find some directors, which then Mark and Brian came on.
From Sony's point of view, it seemed like we were kind of more the right fit for the character, in that they were looking for something maybe more edgy, more violent, more dark, kind of more intense, more insane.
I mean, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance is definitely not a sequel. I mean, this is a totally fresh start in the way they decided how to, you know, shoot it, where the locations were. Before, he was in the American Southwest, and now we were in Eastern Europe and beyond.
You know, I think sometimes with these reboots, there's a rush to wash away everything that came before, because, you know, either the first movie was critically or commercially didn't work. You know, and usually in a movie that doesn't work, not everything in it doesn't work. There's things about it that don't work. I think it's even been to the detriment of some projects to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
One of the things that we had working for us here is that this is a franchise that Nick always loved. He is a biker, he is the Ghost Rider in many ways.
I mean, there might be one line in some of the improvisations that I did where I said, you know, jelly beans might help with that, but that might be the only recall to the original film, which, by the way, I liked, and so does Brian, because it was sort of an introduction to the character for all ages.
It was more of a kid's movie, but the character actually of Ghost Rider is a really dark, kind of grown-up character.
I actually found in my computer some old files, some old concept work from the first Ghost Rider, and it's, you know, it's just nothing at all like the Ghost Rider we're doing. To me, this is not really a sequel. It's kind of a reboot of Ghost Rider.
I mean, we really just sort of kept the things we liked. Nick was terrific in the first one, so we wanted Nick. And throughout the process, we never said, don't do it because it's in the first movie. We're all proud of the first movie. And, you know, what was interesting in the first movie, there was this real sense, you know, with the Johnny Blaze character of, you know, did I make this deal or not? Is this real? What's going on? You know, the movie reflected that. We were very art-directed, you know, sort of almost like a fable. You know, now it definitely happened. And the second movie is about, you know, it's 100% real.
And I'm still running.
I mean, it's kind of like starting from scratch in many ways. I think it's probably closer to who I am, in that I use my own voice as Nicolas, you know. So it's going more in that direction than a completely different character.
Should we talk about Nick? Because, like, we're huge Nick Cage fans.
It's Nick Cage.
And we always imagined that, like, he would have been an awesome Jeff Chelios in the Crank movies.
Yep.
And at the time we were putting that movie together, he was just like off the scale of anybody we could get. But if you think about that character, you know, Nick would have just been like an amazing Jeff Chelios.
We
started by talking about sort of the aesthetics of Ghost Rider and talking about like the charred skull and you know, just aesthetically we wanted this thing to be completely different, and Nick was wide open to all of it.
You know, I'm an actor that wants to facilitate the director's vision, but conversely, they were open. And when they had an idea, or I had an idea that was outside the box, unlike many filmmakers, it didn't scare them. They said, yeah, let's go for it, let's do that.
And he's super cerebral as a guy and his approach to acting. He seems like a lunatic when you see him in movies, but all of that is really well thought out, and he has a point to doing even the most outrageous things that he does. If you ask him to break it down and talk about it, you will find that there's a method to the madness, and he has reasons and he has a theory. That's why his performances are so much more interesting to watch than somebody who's just merely being crazy.
We felt when Nick does Nick, when he gets nice and quirky and commits himself to a role like this one, it's going to be fantastic.
That's weird.
Our discussions with him about the character, even though you think, well, it's a comic book movie, it's really silly, it's a guy with his head on fire on a motorcycle, but actually the conversations got really cerebral and really deep into the mythology of it and what did this demon mean to Johnny Blaze.
And even things like character center, you know, we said, let's think about the hand that you made the actual deal with.
The feeling of the sacrifice, of the pain of the hand, it's always recalling that of the actual initial deal with in this case, Rourke.
But you know, really a lot of it was Johnny Blaze was longing for some kind of connection. And I think, you know, Nick hooked into that. And I think he you know, saw that in the screenplay and was attracted to it. And then I think when he met Mark and Brian, I think he was really sort of excited by these guys who have a really different way of doing things. And they make, they make movies that feel original.
And we were all just immediately impressed by just the energy that they both had.
Actually, what would be real cool is to let the bike catch up and come into your shot, and then you're revealing this whole, like that's your backdrop, right? Okay, look on the left.
They were just so aware of the film that they wanted to make.
Oh, that was the one.
And, you know, it was just very clear thought and very impressive.
It wouldn't have gotten made, though, if Mark and Brian hadn't come on. You know, they came in with such a clear vision of everything they wanted to bring to the movie. Their first presentation, actually everybody realized that we're in good shape.
We officially, I think, were on board sometime end of July, and we were told that the movie had to be in principal photography by November 1st.
I think the studio wasn't sure what they want to do. And sometimes when you're not sure, you kind of hide under the blankets. And thankfully, there was a deadline.
Issues like that sometimes really are very helpful, you know. There's nothing like a deadline like that to make everybody think hard. Like, if you don't make a Ghost Rider movie soon, you never make another.
And it was worth fighting for. Between the David Goyer script, we knew it was brilliant then, but no one will make it.
There was a Goyer script way back when that was pretty kick-ass.
That's
that
true.
We really enjoyed the hell out of that script, and that was inspiring to work off of that.
And that was like 10 years old. Like the first draft, I think Goyer's script was written before Ghost Rider 1, and it was rated R, and it's super gnarly. It's something like you really couldn't make these days because past a certain budget level now, rated R is like, you don't see it anymore. It's kind of like become...
Because Hangover didn't make any money.
Yeah.
Then the studio read it now and recognized, wait a second, it's well worth continuing with. That's something we should do.
Excellent script, insanely R-rated, but it had some, a lot of sort of cool ideas in it. So what we did is we worked with David to sort of re-break that idea into something involving, a larger sense of institutionalized religion getting involved. We moved the story to Europe, and then he worked with two guys from Flash Forward to write a script. that was quite good, and then it was, okay, let's try to find a filmmaker. We met Mark and Brian, liked the script, and then went in and made it their own.
So we had, you know, a matter of weeks to get this script into shape.
Perfect throw, clean head, bloodless. There's no blood.
Yeah, it's like the 18.
PG-13. Parental guidance of a 13-year-old or younger.
The point when we found the script, there was a lot of story.
Yes.
A lot of stuff going on. It was almost like a cross between Lord of the Rings and the Da Vinci Code, and like The Grudge meets Mad Max. Or something. Like, it was really complicated.
Mama's house.
Big Mama's, yeah.
And they did their pass very, very quickly, probably within a month, which the studio got equally excited.
But really, a lot of it was trying to do addition by subtraction and just clean all this stuff out, and you know, get to the essential components of the story. Just really simplify it so you could A, follow what was going on, and B, we wanted to get to the stuff of the Ghost Rider kicking ass as quickly and efficiently as possible.
We wanted souls to be burned and dragged to hell.
Yeah.
And Goyer inspired that.
So we were faced with a very, very short prep time. I think on the ground, the directors were here for 8 weeks before we started shooting.
4 of those weeks, I think we were scouting.
It was a rushed pre-pro schedule. It was so rushed that we ended up shooting in Romania, but we found out we were supposed to be shooting in Hungary.
By the time we were on the ground, I think we were maybe 7 weeks away. And we had to go and visit all these locations. But in a way, that energy is very much reflected almost. It's the energy that you'll see on the screen. It's the energy that sort of propelled the team forward. It's the energy that the directors brought to it. Okay, you know, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And we just powered through those 7 weeks.
With Mark and Brian, it was the fact that they wanted to go on location. And the one thing that was completely different between the 2 movies is we were on distant location for 2 out of the 4 months of shooting. We were literally on the road, moving every week to some other place in Romania or going to Turkey.
It's a spectacular day here in Cappadocia, Turkey. Weather's about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be something in Celsius. Don't know. And boy, does it smell awful.
Yeah, we'll never get all this.
The default some of the time is to build it or to try to find it close by, and they really wanted to go out and find these locations. So we went all over the place doing these things.
We're going to the bridge, we're going to toss off Kerrigan's car, but we have to find out if we're allowed to actually crash through the bridge and kind of f it up and do some major damage to the road. So we'll see what happens.
The idea is if the pillars are here, we catch them on the front right, which definitely gets that spin going.
That's a hearse, actually. That really is a hearse.
We're supposed to do a major car crash on this street with this bridge with no traffic control whatsoever.
Just go fast. It's okay though, because it's a very quiet bridge. No one drives on it.
It's about a lane and a half. I don't see any possibility for a problem at all.
You know, we're just trying to be ready. And here in Romania, just getting anything done is so difficult. You know, it's this kind of post-communist paralysis to the whole country. You know, where they say yes to stuff, and then it never happens, and just everything takes forever. And you know, it's hard getting things done. You know, and you have to double check and triple check, and you know, this is not going to be an easy movie to make.
I've shot all over the world, and this was the first time Mark and Brian has done a whole movie outside of the States. And one of the things you always have to be careful of is translation. It's already in the film business, when you deal with one language, miscommunication happens all the time on set. And you're dealing with just with the English language. So then when you bring in 3 languages, you have to, you don't know what you're being told because things can just get misinterpreted down the road.
Well, we found this location. It was our favorite location in the movie. It was a factory that was basically half of a city. It was a thriving factory during the communist regime, and then when that regime ended, the whole thing was just left to collapse and fall apart. And at the stage when we found it, it basically looked exactly like the world of the future in the Terminator movies.
So he said, that's a great spot for Blazer's, you know, abandoned fort. So he went into this environment, and it was being destroyed. I mean, it was being broken down, but, you know, we picked this area, which was, you know, way away from where the demolition was taking place, and said, well, will this area be here in 4 months' time when we come to shoot? Yes, yes, no problem, no problem.
Every time we went back there, more of it would be gone. And we're like, well, we're coming here to shoot, so we say, okay, this is the section we want. It's gonna be okay, right? And it's like, yeah, we'll talk to the contractors. The contractors from Austria, with Germans doing the construction for the Romanians.
It was a hassle to get there. We went there a couple times, starting to plan it. Every time we got there, they'd, you know, bulldozer would come in and change things. So we'd be like, okay, we'll use this building and that, and either that building had been knocked down or someone had moved 800 tons of rubble in front of it.
We couldn't stop these bulldozers from tearing down more and more of the location.
No, you know you want to shoot in this area, you know, that's going to be fine, isn't it? No problem, no, that's the last thing we're going to take down. And then there was the technical scouts and, wait a minute, what happened to those buildings there?
Every time we came back, more and more of the location was flattened until finally it was just basically...
Like one building left.
Yeah, it was just kind of like
a
big field. In a country that was used to making movies. You know, you'd take that, you'd lock it in, you'd make deals. They'd say, well, you know, we're going to flatten this and demolish it, but, you know, we'll take a fee from you guys and we'll wait a couple months and we won't touch it and tell us exactly what you want to shoot and da-da-da-da. But here it was just everybody nodding and saying, yeah, okay, great, yes. And then we come back and the location's gone. It's like, what? You killed our location. They're like, yes.
But it was one of those occasions where we had too much prep time, and there was a contract to demolish the area, and of course for the contractor to delay the demolition was just not cost effective to him, so he just ploughed on through and destroyed our set.
Then again, we also did a soil test on it and found that it was so toxic to shoot there that if we had shot there, we'd probably all be dead right now, so maybe they knew what they were doing.
It was not OSHA approved.
Maybe they knew what they were doing.
It was a bit of the feeling of like, geez, what's next? Because you could almost not count on anything going smoothly. But I think that the effect of that, it made us all really focused. It brought us together as a crew really quickly because we knew it was sort of us against the universe. Just cosmically what's going to hit us next. And it really, we also started, you know, as we were sort of reacting to our environment and to circumstance, we were taking a really hard look at the script and at choices and, you know, making sure we're really shooting stuff that we need and that's great.
And right now, the only thing standing between you and the writer is me. He's screaming at the door. And if you don't tell me what I want to know, I'm going to let him out. And when he's done with you, there won't be anything left. Do you understand?
We're going to have people from all over. I mean, the actress I think we're getting is Violante Placido, who was in The American with Clooney. She's from Italy. And then the kid's from Spain. I think we're getting Idris Elba from the UK, although his schedule is going to be really hard to work out. And then Nick and Ciarán Hinds from the UK. People are coming in from all over the place. Kerrigan, I think it's going to be Johnny Whitworth, but I think it is, but I'm not sure yet, so that'll be fun.
Hey, you don't know what I had to go through to get this little turd. But what am I saying? Of course you do. The clock on the dash says December 21, 12:42.
This movie for me has been something completely new. I've never been in an action movie before. I mean, this type of action movie. And so there's lots of stuff that you also have to fake. It's not easy to understand what you will go through just in a simple reading rehearsal.
I think it would have been boring if I had been with different people, but as I was with Johnny, Nick, Violante, you know, everybody, Brian, Mark, Brian kept on doing jokes, and I don't know, they all made it interesting for me.
Fergus came out of UK casting, and we thought for sure he was an American kid because he had no accent. Fergus was born in Spain, grew up mostly in the UK, and then moved back to Spain. His parents travel a lot, they're diplomats.
We cast Europeans as Europeans, but they're all the wrong kind of European. Like we cast a guy from the UK, Idris, playing a French guy, instead of casting a French guy. And we cast Violante, who's Italian, and then Fergus, who's from Spain, both as like kind of like Romanian gypsies. So it's just really like, it's a typical redneck Neville Dean Taylor approach that like, well, they're European. I mean, like all Europeans, they have an accent, right?
It's over there in the Europe place.
It's the wrong accent, but it's an accent.
This is the first time I've ever worked with two directors. That was, you know, a little bit of adjustment for me to work out who do I take notes from. I mean, what? You're saying this too, okay.
Says I'm coming as crack. Yeah.
No, put your back, please.
So what you don't want to do, what you definitely don't want to do, is make that gun sound with your mouth. Like that's really bad.
And I leaned over and it fell.
He likes it.
Yeah, just so you can be like Mary, Mother, and Joseph.
I think we're both really up for anything to see what lands, and it is that kind of gonzo wild intensity that both of them have, and hopefully I fit into.
It's frantic, you know, because it's like we really need another month of post. So really it's just meetings and meetings and meetings and going around and meetings and scouting and meeting with people and getting the costumes designed.
You know, I might want to feel some pads going on a little bit. Just like
No,
this
that's
thin,
what
you know,
we just
motorcycle
say.
pads.
This is just the beginning.
It just seems a little
more,
too
yes.
like clubby. It doesn't seem like a motorcycle
I
jacket
thought
to me.
here.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of like
okay.
a
Okay.
form right here.
The Tory until the VW when he takes the Stoner's car.
And we took out the line about the Porsche. That's gone.
Hold, because I think we're going to get notes from...
Whoa, 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 whoa. Notes? We're shooting in 1 week.
It's just all that stuff. For a movie that's this big and this complicated, you know, you really just need a lot of prep time. And we don't really have money. I mean, it's like we have very little money to do this.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of money to spend on the first movie, and we got some pretty spectacular material out of that. It was made predominantly on stage. You know, there was a lot of visual effects in it, and it created a very specific aesthetic. And going into Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, we were going for aesthetic.
When the film was being planned, I think there was a lot of discussions on the budget for this film. And what we eventually found as we were looking, and this is part of where we went with locations as well, is that for the very same film, if we wanted to make it in Australia, it would cost X amount of dollars. If we wanted to make it in New Zealand, it would cost Y amount. And if we wanted to make it in Eastern Europe, it would cost this amount for the very same movie.
We made this movie for 1/3 to half of what they made Ghost Rider 1 for. We had to travel over to Eastern Europe to make it happen, but it's kind of the way we've always made movies. We never really had the money, so we just had to get creative and challenge ourselves with, you know, better ways to make films and cooler, grittier ways to make films.
With our shortened prep and dealing with an action movie that has these types of visual effects, you're doing a film that's just not action intensive, but then you have all the visual effects that have to sort of be dealt with so that it is convincing. And piecing it together, you need to be very careful because it is very complicated.
One of the ways we approached the movie was to try to shoot as much practical stuff as possible, you know? Real stunts with real stunt guys, real motorcycle action and things like that.
Real broken legs.
Yep. And, you know, and then we're just using the CG to enhance.
The movie feels big when you see it. I mean, you know, we were going to these places very few people have photographed, and you know, they look massive. So, you know, instead of having to spend money on matte paintings and green screen, we just went out there and shot it.
The first movie, they spent a lot of money on computer effects, but a lot of it doesn't really feel dangerous. You know, it just kind of feels like computer effects, and some of them are really cool, but we've always kind of wanted it to feel more like the camera was in danger, like the stunt guys were in danger, like the cameraman is in danger, you know, and then kind of try to transmit that sense of peril and, you know, into the experience of watching the movie. So the other good thing about that is, you know, it's cheaper.
I think budgets are very overrated. I think so much of it is about prepping a film. This is certainly not an inexpensive film, but it's certainly not, you know, amongst the hundreds of millions of dollars of movies that are made these days. So I think the film had the budget that it was meant to have. I think the visual effects are going to be stunning. I think the 3D is going to be absolutely, you know, riveting.
Sony said they wanted the movie in 3D. We all were excited to work in 3D. So I mean, it was something we were told that the studio wanted, but we all quickly embraced it. So then the next question was, how the hell do we do it?
We knew that the camera had to be special, so we initially went to Red to start testing their new camera that they still have coming out. I think it's in beta right now. By the time this comes out, I'm sure it will actually be around, so they say. But we tested the Epic, and it looked great. We wanted to use it. It's a very small camera. It's like this big, and you can put actual 35mm movie lenses on it, and it looks great. And because it's small, you can attach that to a very small rig, and it gives you a lightweight 3D rig that we could potentially do handheld moves with, or just be able to move like we're more accustomed to, even though even that would be heavier than what we're used to.
We kind of went down different avenues and talked about acquiring in 3D and then the different systems to acquire with, and we tested a couple systems, and it just seemed like a big pain in the ass for a result that is not as good as a conversion can be if done right.
So our ingoing plan was a very aggressive plan with conversion, so I think what I want to also try to do is to commit to a house or houses so that we can prove to the studio we have our block of time, and we have our vendor. Now, what I like about doing conversion earlier is this is one way that the houses, they want this, because the way the conversion houses are getting screwed is they're saying we got to do a 3-month conversion. We need this in 6 weeks. Right. And they don't want to do shoddy work because they'll get slammed. So by doing this, I think we're going to be able to get the price as well as to commit to a house because they feel like they're not getting screwed.
And shooting 2D really lends to our style of shooting too, which is key. But ultimately, we went for what we thought was better 3D, which was conversion.
I mean, if there was a way to shoot 1D, we would probably do it.
Whenever you work on a 3D movie, at least for now, there's a person who comes on board who's called a stereographer, and he's someone who helps you gauge and control the depth of your shot. You decide if whether or not basically the plane of your movie is at the screen and everything that you see is farther behind the movie screen, or if it's closer to you in the movie theater. And you can control how far and how wide that depth is. So if we were shooting 3D, that's basically what he would have been doing with the couple of cameras that we would have used. But since we're doing 2D, it's all theoretical.
Coming into this world, 3D is kind of an unknown fact for a lot of people. There's very few people in this world that are specializing in it right now and kind of understanding it. And it's true, we're all learning as we go along. There is no magic formula to 3D.
So we're talking about
talking about a potential conversion consultant.
Conversion consultant.
As far as I know, nobody's ever had a conversion consultant. So what this particular person is a jack of all trades, which is I think where we go for this position. Visual effects supervisor. He works for Pace, so he understands 3D. He deals with codecs. He has a truck that does data acquisition and things like that. So he understands all of the components that we're dealing with, and I think that he'll help us as we're shooting with conversion in mind.
This is the proposal for the conversion consultant. He's not going to be one of those guys that tells us like, yeah, you have to shoot everything with wide lenses. You have to do
Craig's
this.
awesome. You guys
can't
are gonna
do
love
quick
him.
cuts. You can't do this and all that stuff.
You guys are gonna love Craig. You're gonna love his attitude.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, what's happening?
Do they forget stuff?
Good, Snuffledy and Taylor.
Well, we never, obviously we've never had a conversion consultant before, or I don't know if anybody else has either, but we're just gonna like nod to their expertise in this and trust that you're awesome. The thing of it is, like, there's a lot of conventional wisdom that we keep, kind of like pablum, that we keep getting fed by the standard 3D guys. We know some of it is absolutely true, but we don't think that all of it is true. And so we really, one of the things we want to do is, like, push the envelope, and we think we can solve, we think we can shoot with longer lenses sometimes, we think we could quick cut sometimes, we think we can do a lot of the stuff that they tell us we can't do. So hopefully.
You can, as long as you protect for some of the things in the images, so
there you go.
You can't push stuff, but it's good to have somebody like what you guys are over doing, whether it's me or somebody else, that's watching that for you.
Yeah, and we don't want you to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but just as long as you tell us when we're really something up so bad that it's not going to work, then I think we really need that.
We just assumed we were going to get some guy who was just going to tell us no about everything. Nothing works. Nothing. We couldn't do anything. But Craig was great, and he was really a part of the process in terms of helping us get what we wanted, and also saying, you guys can do that, but it won't work later. And so we would either adjust or ignore it.
Well, what we found out with all these rules, because a lot of our 3D research involved, you know, the 3D experts telling us like all the things that don't work in 3D.
Shaky camera, no lens flares.
You can't have soft foreground, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And, you know, it just seemed like, well, why?
And we're can-do people.
And because of this sort of, you know, concern about, are we going to shoot 3D, are we going to shoot 2D, we ended up sort of losing our place in line to get gear, if that makes sense. So we were in Europe in a very, very busy time in Europe. I mean, there's always big movie shooting. You've got, you know, the new Pirates movie, you've got X-Men was shooting, Three Musketeers was shooting over in, I don't know, Germany or France, and a couple of other really giant projects. So by the time we were like, okay, we know what we want, here's the cameras we want, people were like, yeah, we don't have it. We have landed right in this kind of crazy hurricane of a multitude of productions all across Europe that are literally eating up all of our gear that we would rent from.
We had to find our trucks in London. We brought lights from Italy. We brought pieces of gear from Germany. And the one last, you know, we had to start shooting, and I think we were about 6 days away, and we did not have any cameras. You know, the people in Germany threw up their hands. London threw up their hands. New York, Los Angeles, we could not, and we needed a pretty big package, and we just couldn't find it.
He actually had to fly to India because he has an Indian passport. He's actually there right now. He had to fly to India to check off all the gear on the list to make sure that that we could get all the gear to ship it back here, and he gets back in tomorrow.
I just, on a whim, called up these guys I knew in Mumbai, and they said, oh yeah, we have everything. I said, what do you mean you have everything? I said, it's not possible when the largest camera vendors in the world don't have it. They're like, yeah, we have everything. So we sent, you know, I just didn't believe it. I said, I'm gonna get on a flight. And I went there, and there it was. They had pretty much every single piece of equipment that we wanted. So, but this was, you know, by this point, we were 3 days away from the shoot. We didn't have visas, we didn't have carnets, and, you know, we just scrambled within 2 days. I was running around, we packaged everything. I actually brought, I think it was about 2.5 tons of camera gear as my personal baggage over from India, just so that we could shoot in time.
And the crazy part about this is that normally when you're prepping a movie, you get, you know, your technicians will get, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to prep something, or, you know, at least a week to look at the gear. We're gonna get this stuff literally like the day before we start shooting. So we're basically just jumping right into the field with this gear, hoping that it'll work. It's kind of crazy and a little bit stressful. You know, that's kind of, that's one of many different obstacles we're up against. We kind of had a lot of different situations like that in particular, but I mean, in the end, everything was fine and it all worked out. But it was pretty amazing to me that, you know, even on the big movie that will happen. It's pretty funny.